Okay, good morning, everybody. Everybody awake? What did Andreas do? Here, they are yawning.
There you
All right, perfect. We have another presentation from Staffordshire. This time, Cameron is doing the presentation with the headset in the right way.
Yeah, it's a good start. Good start to the
Good
day.
start. And yeah, it is done by Joshua, what you just told me, first
Yeah.
graduate.
Yeah, so Josh is a unique case. So he was in the first graduating cohort in Staffordshire University. So he's done his whole education in esports, which is a bit of a weird conundrum. But I'm going to talk to you about how he's got through this as well and how our department kind of works a little bit, because it's a bit confusing for anyone from a traditional academic sense as well.
Yeah, and but the topic is also quite important, which
Yeah.
is something where how do we get esports practitioners with the university together? And most of you know how difficult that can be. And therefore, it's a really important topic. And we get an insight into how it's working in the UK.
Yeah.
The
So
floor is yours.
hello again. I'm still sunburnt, just to remind everyone. But I sort of got dragged to do this last minute. We run an event on our campus called Campus Clash. I'm wearing the top just to remind myself that I had to talk about it. Where we have a big showcase of student events playing across 12 different titles over a week. And Josh organizes all of that. So before we came, between me and Josh, we had about 30 hours sleep in the space of like 4 weeks. So he's also bought a house, and he's redoing his house at the moment, which is another reason he's going to Italy soon. So he's very upset that he couldn't make it. But we have a track record with our course leaders end up having heart attacks from overworking. So I was quite happy to tell him not to. So just a little bit about Josh to go into it. So he's our current course leader. So I stepped down last year after Ying Ying Law came back, who's our head of department, head of course, and Josh and Phil, who are two of our graduates, have taken over our role, which is very unheard of within the context of academia. But it works extremely well within our department, because our department's average age, like I said yesterday, is about 26. And it's one of the things that works really well in terms of integration within industry. So Josh's background is he runs a multi-million-pound business as well. In the catering world. I don't know how he ended up in esports, but we'll leave that for him to discuss. But his focus in terms of research is he's one of those horrible people who do qualitative research. So he looks around how industry relations impact in terms of esports curricula and esports curriculum design. And he was the person behind the lovely £2.9 million build that we had alongside EFL. So although his academic credentials are still a long way off where we go through, he's got a lot of experience in terms of how esports curricula works. And I'm not the most forthcoming with compliments towards people. So if I'm saying he's good, he's good. And he's also a pretty good writer for someone who hasn't got a huge amount of academic underpinning. So that's Josh. As you can see, we don't take ourselves too seriously at Staffordshire University. All of our photos are a bit of a joke, and that was from his wedding, was in December. Just a little joke about his wedding. It was the coldest day of the year in the UK. Somehow I fainted from heat stroke. But yeah, that's a lovely photo if you look online as well, because he loves sharing it with people. I'm surprised he hasn't put it up on here for your amusement. So foremost, in terms of what esports is at Staffordshire University, we are what would be classified in terms of old curricular design as a studies-based program. So we have a range of different topics that come into our disciplinary sort of process. And we have a very unique way of teaching in relation to not the UK. You may have similar methods in other parts of the world, but in terms of the UK, we are very unique in terms of how we approach curricula. Stoke is in a bit of a weird place in relation to how the UK is. We're not in a big city. We're in a city that was built out of 7 towns, and they came together under the potteries. So you may have Stoke pottery at home. Don't worry if you don't. I didn't realise until I moved to Stoke that we had pottery as an example. But it was something that they came in with game design about 25 years ago. And we've done 20 years of games ever since. We're the biggest game school in the whole of Europe with over 3,500 undergraduate students, 500 postgraduate students, and about 25 PhD students within the field of games and game studies. So one of the things that we looked at within this is eSport represents a dynamic context, blending entertainment and culture within the structure and events found in traditional sports. We looked at it from a sporting and esporting angle, and we looked at how we could adopt that within our curricula. Gloucester University was the first UK university to run an esports degree. There are other cases across Europe, but it was the first one that unfortunately gained a lot of public attention. And within higher education, esports-specific programs are diverse and increasing in number globally. I think most of you are either in the first year or a couple of years of running esports curricula. Please do it better than what we got given, because we had to go and fix a lot of stuff. And then we looked in terms of live events, psychology research, sports science research, and how it's multidisciplinary. And our multidisciplinary approach takes over a range of other external factors. Because of the fact that we are an esports only department, which sounds a really weird, convoluted way to go about it, we are all specialists within esports, which means that all of our work is completely, utterly different and also a pain in the arse to collaborate with. So when it came to this live, and we looked at this in terms of how we wanted to go around with our curricula and our curricular design, so we looked at it in market, public relations, video, community management, and communication. And I specialize in the communication part of it because, or as I told you yesterday, ASD, not very good when it comes to communication. So historic issues with higher education of esports, I'm not going to run through this. If you want to look too much into it, I've talked about most of it to most of you. Yeah, we had a really bad article where students revolted about us. That got all sorted. It went to a person called Ian Blatchford. If you come to London, you will meet Ian. Very nice guy, dresses the most smart I've seen of any lecturer or any head of department ever. And we got pretty much shafted by the media about our course, rightfully so. And then this sort of came out of it. The course suffered heavily from recruitment, too large a cohort. We had in our first year of running the course 180 active students with 2 lecturers. Yeah, it didn't work, and there was a lot of backlash, and rightfully so. We will be the first to admit that there were massive issues with our course. It was before I joined. When I joined, I had to do all the cleanup for it, and I'm quite good at dealing with cleanup, and Josh helped quite a lot within that as someone who had gone through that program. And the course had national survey results, which we were scoring below 30%. Our lowest score was 12%, 12% student satisfaction. The average student satisfaction in the UK, to give you context, is about 86%. So we were rubbish. So what we did to resolve this was, according to the investigation article, a source close to the university said the following, and I'm not going to read this out too much, but it was quickly eloped that the staff knew less about esports than the students. And it was a course that had no real underpinning or academic viewpoint, and it wasn't very specialized. So another article from Dom Sacco, you can read all these, they're still in the public domain. We use them to go and say, this is how we resolved things, so we don't have any issue with it. Dom keeps them up for us because it's a good view for us, and we like having public open information. So when we think about this in terms of the university and the process behind it, in recent years, the number of esports education programs has drastically increased. And our biggest solution in terms of what we can provide to other universities, I guess, is you can't do it worse than us, so come and ask us how we fixed it. And we looked at it in relation to how courses were changing, and we spent 2 years rewriting our program. We were trying to think of what we were going to call it, and then we realized that, believe it or not, when you're trying to get an 17, 18-year-old into university, they're going to look up esports as a name. It doesn't matter what else it goes into it, because we couldn't go, well, we wanted to do game studies, but it didn't really make sense because they wouldn't look that up, they would look up esports. So from a marketing perspective and marketing perspective only, we are called esports. Our course doesn't really cover just esports. We use esports as a learning tool, and that is the tool that we drive into every other aspect of our curriculum. And then in 2018, the university was the only UK higher education provider offering an esports degree, powered by reported recruitment figures showing the course recruiting around about 133 students in the first 2 years. Each year, like I said, about 180 students across our level 3 and level 4. So foundation year, we had 180 students, 2 lecturers. It didn't work. In 2023, several competitors such as Confetti, Northampton, Chichester, College of Esports now offer degrees, and that means that on average we're recruiting roughly about 60 students per course at the moment. We still have a slightly larger majority, but that's because we've got legacy. Even bad legacy sometimes is good legacy. And this was from Confetti, and we built our arena based off what Confetti had, and we wanted to do it better because it's about competition, and all esports is about competition. So when we think about it in terms of designing our curricula, we spent 2 years dealing with this. There's not a set practice established on how curricular design should incorporate studies within esports, and usually when I'm one of these people who like set curricula and set curricular design, it doesn't work. So as many of you are aware, trying to recruit people in the esports space in terms of lecturers is like near on enough impossible. So we had to find a way to actually recruit within some of the times, and that's not always great. And we also had to work out ways that we could get unique perspectives involved. So we decided that we would start working with industry a lot more. Trying to get them to be full-time lecturers was going to be very difficult, and most of industry are very specifically good at 1 or 2 very unique things, and that's how they work within the curricula. So from that perspective, we ended up taking the view that previous examples of esports qualifications have not been without criticism. An industry certificate was widely condemned as irrelevant on social media, and a lot of the small certifications were seen as completely pointless. The backlash in relation to public perceptions on esports is drastically viewed based on the assumption that the industry doesn't need qualifications. It's a very weird way of doing it, conundrum behind it, and because of that, you have to provide additional value to industry. We have to meet them halfway. So how do we meet them halfway? Well, we decided that we would take a unique angle of putting our students in industry wherever we could. Within our curricula, on average, students do about 500 hours of voluntary or paid work during their studies at Staffordshire University. This is working with at least 9 different suppliers. So they will work with 9 different parts of the esports industry, sports industry, etc. And we wanted to show them that our students were learning valuable skills. It's very hard to get people to believe that they are learning and they've got good skills without putting them in front of people. And the way we did that was pretty self-explanatory. We went, you need someone to help you run this event. You're a team of 3 people and you're running an event with you need 30 members of staff. Here's our students. We set the booking system up in terms of how you pay them. This is how it works. It worked. We paid a lot of it worked for industry to the first time they do it, and then they pay our students after that. So it was a relationship where if you don't think our students are good, you don't have to pay them, we will pay them. And that works like a charm, because after it, they realized, oh, wait, our students are actually fantastic and they can do this better than most of our team can. So it became a very good relationship, and that then spread like wildfire. Industry went, well, we need to have multiple members of staff. We can't reasonably do this on our own. How do we recruit them? We recruit them from students. So the vast majority of our students now have a freelancing experience or have freelancing-based work behind it. It's part of their provision and degrees. Current housing providing a degree in terms of autonomy bounded by traditional structures is still free within its expression. We were lucky enough, because of how bad our degree was, that we have a lot of freedom in terms of how we develop the curricula to better suit our students. We are not tethered to traditional academic norms. So the first one that we actually did was actually set up by our students. So 4 of our students came to ES which ESI, because I always get ESI and ESL mixed up, even though they're completely different things. In 2022, 4 of our students came to ESI in their final year of study. These were the last year who came in the COVID years. And they came to this industry event, which we happened in the UK. There are different examples across the globe in terms of ESI, but there are different examples in relation to other countries as well. ESI is our networking event for esports professionals within the UK. These students decided to go on their own back. Since then, we've got a partnership directly with ESI to take students to the event. And they reached out to Alpine Esports, a person called Matthew Bincliffe, who's no longer there. And he's a little bit more eccentric than I am, only a little bit. And he was like, okay, we can do a project with you. And they put a pitch together and they worked really hard. The 2 of those students now work for Alpine, and now they're the executives of Alpine Esports. So in the first year of working at Alpine, they are the 2 people who run Alpine Esports now. And they work with the Alpine F1 team. I'm not allowed to watch Alpine F1, by the way, because every time I watch them, they both crash into each other. So I'm not allowed to watch that because that's happened twice. I've only watched them twice and it happened both times. So they took over this project and they run the Alpine Community Cup, which on average gets about 120 viewers for every stream, and they do the broadcast over 6 weeks. On average, it reaches about 6 million views across social media, and it's something that we now have within house. So we've run that now 2 years in a row. That was the first project we did in terms of this sort of scale where we brought in and developed industry. After that, we did something in relation to Brink, and I don't know if Josh has covered that, but Brink is the one that I worked more closely on, which is a Smash Ultimate event where we take the best players in the UK and they compete each other in like a ladder format. And we bring students to run that event as well, and that did rather well in terms of reaching about 150 concurrent viewers. And this was the Alpine Community Cup, where we had students involved with this. It's a voluntary sort of experience, but we take time out of the curriculum where they can gain this additional experience. And this was run predominantly by our level 6 students, but it has students from our level 3, 4, and 5 course alongside it. So it was about having that interconnection between years. One of the best ways to improve esports curricula in terms of how you get engagement is by having people work from multiple different years together. So how do we look at this in terms of the adjustments behind it? Whilst researchers such as Schultz, there you go, you're back here again, I told you, you'll be up here at some point, have extensively inquired into the stakeholder ecosystem and the value integration. Excluding the discussion is often educational institutes. We seem to think that we are apart from the industry, but for the vast majority of the UK at least, we are most of the industry. As in, most of the money within the UK esports sphere is in with education at the moment because of the way that tuition fees work. In adjacent industries, many organisations develop working relationships with universities with their own benefits, such as knowledge exchange and greater exposure to industries for students. The way that we want to do this was, well, we can work with multiple different sectors and we can provide our students with multiple different opportunities, and they are able to then utilise and maximise on those opportunities. First one was Alpine, we then had Brink, we then ended up working quite closely with our football team, our local football team, Stoke City. But we also have worked with Man City and a range of other suppliers. We've also worked with quite a lot of professional football players who've decided that they want to go into esports and they want to run an event, and it usually works within that. Whilst education offering for esports is much more recent, much less course available due to the sort of enriched or niche aspect of the curricula. So one of the things we looked at within this was the perceived struggles in terms of universities can provide large amounts of value from in-kind relationships with industry. We don't pay any of our we don't have any sponsored agreements with any company. So we're in the agreement where I know a lot of our competitors pay large amounts of money to companies to have unique licenses. We do not provide that. We choose not to do that because our students are much more valuable to them as a resource in terms of their graduate outcomes than that. I don't have to worry about that with my students because I know by the end of it, my students are better than most people in industry. And that sounds like I'm being really big-headed. I'm not. which is the worst thing about it. As someone who came from the esports industry into academia, the reason why I came into it, because I wanted to train people to be better. I wanted to get rid of this sexist sort of bigotry sort of approach to esports. So when it came to this, we looked at the methodology. In the paper exploration, we looked at the nuanced ecology of esports industry and education being carried out in terms of actions. We looked at it in relation to research projects, in terms of the conjunction between the case study and its place within the development of esports curricula. And we interviewed all the participants of it, the people who ran it from both the industry side, but also our students at the time. And we looked at it in terms of how it was beneficial to them from both sides of the party line. And we now have a document that comes into consideration when it comes to this. And we show that document to our people in industry who want to work with us. We looked at it in terms of how we were taking both interviews from both sides of it, in terms of the students, but also in relation to the deliverables, and this is very much qualitative. And then from a quantitative data from the event, we also were able to take in terms of adjustments in terms of the earned revenue by the company and how that looked in relation to the engagement and the exposure behind it. So from the students, these are the positive outcomes that we found from it. They looked at it in relation to authentic industry engagement in terms of how it came about, improved self-efficacy, development of both soft and hard skills, and reputable experiences for their portfolios. Esports curricula, one of the big things I go into, I love research, and I think research is a fantastic conundrum for most people, including myself. But the fact is, for most people, no one cares about research apart from what we do, and I know that sounds really mean, but it is true. We looked at it in terms of developing relationships within industry, improved graduate outcomes, associations in terms of reputable events, and knowledge exchange. So that's what we came in terms of our university. They gained exposure in terms of that area, and that helped in terms of having people for our GradX and a range of other factors. And from industry, it was engagement with the community and social programs, good value in terms of student-run events, and they were also able to take on events which were below their usual scale. Trying to tell an F1 team, let students run an event when your company makes tens and hundreds of millions of pounds each year, it was like we had to work out how was that best for them without making an impact in terms of their brand. And when you do it with students, they're a lot more happy because if it goes wrong, they're only students, so it's quite good in terms of their view. So we have 2 courses at our university, which I also wanted to just highlight before I run out of time. We have our esports course and we have our F1 engineering course, or our motorsport engineering course. There are more people from our esports course working in F1 in the 3 years we've had graduates in on our F1 course in the 25 years that they are running it, which is quite ironic. We looked at it in terms of negative. We had increased workload for our students, so how do we accommodate that? Well, we made it part of their curricula. We allow them to have additional time in terms of making sure their assignments, and we are allowed to apply it to their assignments. It's one of the great things about our curricula is the fact we can change things and accredit things in association with that. And we also looked at an increased reputational risk as they look to break into the industry. If things went wrong, that would impact their careers moving forward, so we had to make sure they did it right. And students knew that, we prepared them for it. We also looked in terms of increased reputational risk if it goes wrong, having a larger exposure. Alpine may not be the biggest F1 team, but they're still a good F1 team in relation to that. Student churn and difficulty in terms of consistency. We had lots of students who worked on this event. We had 30 students across the multiple years. And to better use that student base, there was going to be lots of churn. There are students who are better at certain things than others, and that just takes time and practice. We also looked at it in terms of time versus value. What was the time distribution to it, and what was the value in terms of questions over support from the university, work input from academic staff. Me and Josh are very hands-on people. We like doing lots of things. We're not very good at saying no. So it was a lot of late nights for staff members as well. And then university must have facilities or ability to create value for industry. My biggest pet peeve with esports courses is I'm going to build a gaming lab and we're going to have gaming computers, and that's it. That is not value to industry for the most part. Please bear that in mind, because it's very hard to get them to engage with that unless it's from a different point of view. We're lucky enough that we've got that facility. We got that facility because we were so bloody bad. And that's one thing behind it. Then we looked around in terms of student churn and difficulty and consistency, time versus value in consideration of brand and image reputation. So in terms of this, in terms of how it goes into, we take a lot now from Alpine, not just Alpine, but all of our providers. They create live industry briefs. So our students work, most of our events our students work are always live industry briefs. They do not ever do events for the sake of doing events. The only event that we run from a university standpoint for students, is our Campus Clash event, which is a good showcase at the end of the year. It's a good feel factor for our students who are graduating. Event attendance, so we looked at in terms of attending Epic LAN. Epic LAN is our big UK LAN event. Last year we sent 60 students to work at Epic LAN. 55% of the people who were working at Epic LAN were Staffordshire University students, which is a very, very high percentage. And it was also meant that I have to give students the days off because Epic LAN runs over Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I had to change the curricula and the times around that again. And then we looked about in terms of collaborative events. So we looked about how Alpine Community Cup would work, a much closer relationship in which all parties must work together to focus on developing the end result, where there's no point in having education if there's no end result for students in terms of how they develop. And industry has to have a nuance in terms of the value behind that. In the UK in particular, we're not very good at having industry and UK university relations. We work very simultaneously and independent. We don't have the alumni scheme that people have in the US, and we don't have the government support that a lot of European countries do. So it's quite a unique aspect in relation to that. So apparently, thank you to me to present this today. I don't know why he put this bit, but if you're interested in any of this or any of our other projects, josh.wales/Ferguson at staff.ac.uk is a person to contact in relation to that. I can answer any questions now, by the way. I have worked on all of these events, and I probably went a bit off topic. But I was also involved in this, was his first sort of piece of research as a lecturer or as an academic as a whole. So I was quite heavily involved in terms of the methodology, so I can also talk about that.